If you're worrying right now that you have travelled through time unexpectedly because On the Ledge shouldn't be out for another week, relax. This is a bonus episode, an extra, a freebie for you to enjoy. And in part 2 of my succulent extravaganza, I'm in the Bristol area again, meeting cactus and succulent grower and seller Tony Irons to talk all things lithops and more. How the devil are you? My name is Jane Perrone and I am host of On the Ledge podcast, usually a show that comes out every other week, but it's May, everyone's growing, everything's getting rather fecund, and so is this podcast. So there's going to be a few bonus episodes in the next few weeks. This episode is a follow-up to episode 291, where I travelled down to Bristol in the UK to visit Hayley Stevens of Mint Plants. Now, in that interview, Hayley mentioned a chap called Tony Irons, and Tony lives a few miles away from Mint Plants, specifically a place called Portishead, which may ring a bell if you are aware of the English trip-hop band of the same name. And he is a prolific cactus and succulent grower and seller. So I headed over to his greenhouse after my visit to Hayley to find out about his collection, growing and selling cacti and succulents, and in particular the wonderful world of lithops, aka the stone plants.
Tony Irons. I'm a cacti and succulent grower and propagator. I've been here in Portishead for about 30 years and I've had this large glass house for about 20 years of that.
I just said as I came in, this is probably the best organised greenhouse that I've seen. It's absolutely pristine. Everything is in its place. I guess this is how you have to be when you're growing plants for sale. So your collection here, ranging from various different genera and cacti and succulents. Talk me through some of your favourites. Is there anything here that you're never going to sell that's particularly special?
Right, I specialise in lithops, which are living stones. These are lithops down here, which I don't sell those because they're stock plants. I wait for the bees to pollinate the flowers, and the bee is me with a faux squirrel brush. So
really?
I produce my own seed.
What kind of brush?
A faux squirrel. Not real squirrel, but faux squirrel. It's a very light brush that just
feathery sort of. Okay.
And I produce my own seed. You can see in this one there, the pods are coming through.
Yes.
Then in the autumn each year, I pick them off, packet the seeds up, and then I start to sow indoors in the propagator from November each year. And mostly I sow about 9,000 seed a year.
Wow. And what is it about these stone plants that really obviously catches your attention? They're your favourites. What is it that appeals?
I grew into it. I used to grow the whole range of cacti and succulents, but gradually I found I was able to look after lithops, grow them, pollinate them and sell them, because to some people they are hard to deal with. You've got to learn when to water, when not to water, what sun to give them, etc., etc. A lot of people can't get on with it because it's so different to most of the other cacti and succulents.
Well, give us your potted, excuse the pun, guide. I mean, this is where people get scared because I know, got to water at this point, but not at this point. Break it down for us, Tony.
Right, with these plants, we're talking in March, but we don't water the lithops until they've changed their bodies, which they do over the winter, and the new bodies come through. So we start watering at the end of May each year. We'll carry on watering normally until about August. Then I reduce the watering until come October they've had their last water. From October through to the next May, no water at all. They semi-hibernate, and during that semi-hibernation, the old bodies gradually shrink and the new, more colourful bodies come through.
I like the way you're describing them as bodies, because they are quite quite a sort of a fleshy quality to them. Presumably this adaptation is designed for them to survive quite harsh conditions where they grow in Africa.
Yes, most of them come from South Africa and Namibia. They've got to contend with the goats, with the weather. They live on very little water. A lot of it is water blown up from the foreshore, up the valleys, and they conserve the moisture in those bodies. You've also got the problem of natives, new roads, new trackways, new villages forming that can decimate a population, because some of them just grow on one hillside in one area and nowhere else. So they really need to be nurtured.
And the flowers are fascinating too, and you've got these interesting seed pods that follow. How do you get them to flower? Can they sometimes not flower if they're not happy?
Well, if you look above you in the glass house, I've got a fourth bench up there.
Yes, okay.
Which attracts the sun right in the top. Now that tries to mimic the intensity of the sun in Africa, and that way they can grow just above soil level without getting elongated, struggling to get the sun. So I provide a lot of sun, and that's it.
That is a secret. That is a secret. And I guess that might be the problem growing these on a windowsill, that maybe they do start to get a bit... I've seen ones where they're sort of they're not supposed to be sort of stretching up,
and they look ugly.
They don't look great like that. So I guess if you're growing them indoors, maybe a grow light is a good supplement to.
And also you don't generally see them in garden shops, plant shops, basically because they can't provide the light they need. If they're in the shop within a month, they start to get elongated, and the staff don't know how to water them.
So when you do water them from sort of May to sort of tailing off after August, down to no water from October, how are you doing it? Does it matter top, bottom?
It doesn't particularly, because of the amount I've got here, I have to use a hose. And the problem where the glass house is, the water is hard. So consequently, when you water from above, you can get markings on the body. Although it disappears, it's not ideal. But I can't do anything else about it. To water by a watering can would take 2/3 of a day. I don't think the back would stand it.
Absolutely. And have you got any favourite lithops? Are you hybridising, producing your own?
I have got my own hybrid.
Okay, let's have a look at that.
It's called Ironstone.
Oh, well, that's a great name.
Because lithops are nicknamed living stones, and the brown markings on the body look like lumps of ironstone from South Africa.
Ah, okay.
So I've had to write a description for it, get it recognised, and you can see here there's 2 seed pods which come the autumn I'll be able to pick out and sow more seed.
I describe these seed pods as looking like a Trivial Pursuit counter. I guess that's that's a slight license, but they are sort of these round little nubs, and they're very clever at conserving their seed, aren't they?
In the wild, they wait until the rains come to open the seed pods, because the rain activates the seed pod to open, and 85% of the seed spread out around them. But they're clever. They're not sure if that rain's going to be sufficient to germinate the seed in the ground, so they wait. And then 3 weeks later, if the rains have come and are substantial, the other 15% of the seed will fall out and blow out from the seed pod.
I guess they've got to sort of hedge their bets a little bit to make sure they can survive.
Yeah.
And what is the parentage of that ironstone cultivar?
It's a couple of Lithops species that have been crossed, and it's bred so that when seeds are produced, the new seedlings all show the new characteristic.
Right. And is that something you enjoy doing, that hybridisation? Is it
I enjoyed
fun?
it. It was nice having one that I was able to name myself. It was accepted. It had to be written up in a journal and published. I think it was about 2015. And I've seen them in a catalogue from Sweden, the seed for sale.
Oh, okay.
In fact, my wife turned to me. She said, "Are they allowed to sell your seed?" I said, "Yeah, of course they are."
And the other thing that I think people worry about with lithops is substrate. You probably aren't going to succeed if you just put them in regular houseplant compost, and I'm sure you have your own special formulation. What do you recommend, though?
For sowing the seed, I sow in 50% by volume vermiculite and 50% John Innes seed compost. It leaves it nice and pliable to prick out the seedlings very easily. Any John Innes 2 or 3 has got a lot of goodness in it that the seeds don't need at a young age. Plants will need it, but seedlings don't.
So, and then once you've got them potted on and they're in their mature form, what do you use then?
I use the same cactus and succulent mix as I do for all the other plants. A lot of grit in with it. Peat is being phased out this year, so next year there won't be any peat in the compost at all.
And has that been a tricky change? Have you been experimenting with different things, or?
Yes, a couple of nurseries have given me peat-free compost to try out, but to be honest, it's utter rubbish.
There's a lot of experimentation needed, isn't there, to get it right?
The problem with peat, I mean, it does damage the environment by using it, but also it attracts scourfly and such like, and with lithops you don't want little scourfly nibbling your seedlings, and the imitation ones that use perhaps ground down bits of plastic and so on is just as bad. So really they haven't got a true peat-free compost available that is suitable for cacti and succulent growers yet.
Yeah, but you found something that you're happy enough with to...
I found this one, which I've started repotting everything in that soil. You run your finger through it.
Yeah.
It's lovely and gritty.
Yeah, looks perfect.
Yeah.
More from Tony Irons' greenhouse shortly, but a couple of little reminders for you in the meantime. Derek Haynes, the chocolate botanist, is going to be on the show answering your botany questions. Yes, yours. So please do remember to send me your questions concerning anything to do with plant science, your houseplants, how they grow. Derek can help. So drop me a line to ontheledgepodcast@gmail.com and we will be rounding them up in a special episode with Derek, which should be enormous fun. Also, it's not too late to get tickets for the Malvern show. I am going to be there on the 11th and 12th of May. It's on the 9th and 10th of May as well. There's a special houseplant festival at the show for the first time this year. It takes place in Malvern in Worcestershire, and the houseplant festival will be packed with really amazing planty people like the bearded plantaholic, Ben from Worcester Terrariums, and a whole host of trade stands from houseplant sellers ranging from Ottershaw Cacti and the Aroid Attic to Dibley's Nurseries and Between Two Thorns. So you can buy plants, learn about plants, talk about plants. I'm going to be doing a live podcast recording as well, which will be enormous fun. So do check out the show notes for a link to buy tickets, or just visit RHS Malvern, that's malvern.co.uk. I would love to see you there. It's going to be so much fun. I will have copies of my book, Legends of the Leaf and Houseplant Gardener in a Box, available for sale, and I will happily sign your copy, whether you've bought it from me or not. I am also lining up a series of episodes that I'm calling Late Night on the Ledge. So these are going to be episodes for adults only, with very much planty themes, but striking out a little bit from my usual core content. So for example, there's going to be an episode about planty tattoos, for example. If you can think of something in particular that you'd like me to cover in one of these late night on the ledge episodes, then do drop me a line. I'm still taking suggestions. Right, back to my chat with Tony Irons to find out more about the tartan tennis ball.
Now, you've got one of my absolute favourite succulents here. It's not a cactus. Euphorbia rubisa. Yeah. I remember seeing that in the Dr. Hussain's Houseplant Expert as a child, and just being absolutely captivated, just thinking it was a most amazing thing. Yeah. I think the euphorbias are wonderful succulents because there's just so many. Obviously, it's a huge genus, not just succulents, but there are some really wonderful ones. I think one of my favourite names for it is it called the tartan golf ball or the tartan tennis ball? I've heard it called.
I've not heard that. I must admit, I tend to use the Latinised names because
absolutely
when we used to trade abroad, German, French, Russian, whatever, if you use the Latin names, you understood what it was.
Yeah.
Whereas by calling it a golf ball or bunny's ears, it changes from each country.
Absolutely. I mean, am I right in thinking that this is a euphorbia where you have male and female plants? Am I right in that?
That's it, yes. You can see two here. The stamens, you can tell which is male and which is female. And people do ask me to send plants, one male, one female.
Right.
I can do that when they're flowering, but the rest of the year I can't.
Yeah, of course. So, only when they're flowering can you actually tell.
That's it. And also, you probably don't realise they can change their sex during their lifetime.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you could end up with one of each and then find one changes.
Right.
And you're left scratching your head, wondering why you can't get any viable seed.
That's amazing. I knew that happened with other plants, but I didn't realise that could happen with the euphorbia. In a way, it's quite a basic plant. It's just a lump of plant tissue, but it's got these amazing talents.
But they were here on the earth before you and I.
Exactly.
So they've had a lot of experience on how to treat the climate and conditions that they're thriving in.
Yeah.
So they've probably learned a lot more than us.
Absolutely. And next to it, you've got the lovely Senecio. I'm just going to read this.
Senecio, yeah.
So what is it? Staphyliformis.
Staphyliformis, yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of that recently around. It's got this incredible sort of striated, marked single stem. It's kind of curious, but I imagine that is also. How do you say? You don't say Senecio. You say Senecio.
You can say Senecio. It's a bit like tomato.
Indeed. All the names I say them on the basis of how I first read them when I read them in a cactus book about 40 years ago.
I still struggle on the names. And it is hard. I had a friend come back from Spain and they said in the capital they were selling those as a single stem, as the pencil succulent.
Right.
€5 each. But I've never seen them selling them in the UK like that. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Different countries have different ways of doing things. You've got a lovely sort of collection of different small, nice sort of, I don't know what that is. Was that like a 5 centimetre pot sizes that you're selling?
Yes, these are 6.5. They are Dutch pots, Kuma pots, which are biodegradable because in Holland they grow so much plants that they found that the tip couldn't cope with the soil, the dead plants and the pots. They just weren't working, so they brought in a law, whereas these pots, if they get damaged or the sun damages it, within 18 months it has to degrade down to nothing.
Right, okay.
We don't have that over here in the UK, but I think that's a great way of making sure you're looking after the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. And so these have all been recently potted up. Are you starting to water these now? We're getting into watering season. Where are we now?
Just
middle
had
of
the
March.
second watering last weekend. Yeah. Because we're now middle of March. It's been a very mild winter. Things have been showing signs of growing, and with the new soil I've brought in, I've been potting them all up in new soil so I can get a good idea this year how they're reacting.
And any other particular favourites here that we need to mention? I mean, I'm seeing some really...
There's so many.
I know, that's the trouble.
I love this one, a Gymnocalycium friedrichi. The colours and the markings on that body, they're on their own roots. It's a lovely reddish brown. And when it flowers, it's a coloured flower. Most gymnos are very pastel in colour, which aren't too attractive, but friedrichi has a nice pink flower. So that's proved very popular this year. I've had quite a few in, and I've had to restock.
That is that the one that people often graft the gymnos onto other things?
Yep.
Ah, yes. They call it the moon cactus, don't they? What is that graft? Tell us about the graft, the rootstock. What?
Well, the thing is, if you have the yellow, the reds in the body, you're not going to get chlorophyll. So it has to be grafted onto a stock that's green. It enables it to grow. It won't live on its own. If the stock died and the top was left, you've got to graft it onto a green stock to get proper growth. So that's why you always see those grafted.
And how do you take... Is that going to last forever, or is this something where it's not going to... Eventually, the yellow bit's going to get miserable?
It's not going to last that long because the stock, to my mind, isn't that sturdy. But... a younger person or someone just getting into cacti succulents, it looks colourful.
Yes.
And if it encourages someone to learn about a plant and to grow it, they can then go on to the really difficult ones.
Absolutely. And is this Hylocereus, the base there, the rootstock?
A lot of them are, yes. You get different types of stock, but it's not particularly sturdy.
So, as you say, drawing you in, but not necessarily something that long term is going to be successful. No. But you've got all your lithops here ready to sell. Presumably, these are all your plants that you've potted up, and they look really. So they're just so cute. I think that's one of the things that people love. And here we can see, is this what we're seeing here where the new body is starting to come through?
That's it. The old body is losing its colour and the new body is taking the goodness from the old body. So these here you're looking at will get no water until the end of May. When that would have happened, the old bodies would have virtually disappeared and you've then got the new body.
They're absolutely delightful. I mean, each one is different, isn't it? You could spend hours studying these and never get bored because they are all so different. I guess designed to match be camouflage for wherever they're growing in the wild. Any particular... are these all relatively the same level of difficulty, or are there any that are like, well, if you're just starting out, start out with this one?
Well, if someone's interested... and they're just starting, I'll tell them which ones to avoid because some like less water, less mollycoddling than others. So I do tell them so that they don't lose them. But when you're pricking them on, repotting them, if you damage the roots, that's often fatal. You've got to be very careful. I've got a South African friend who lives in this country. He's got a house in South Africa. And he knows the areas they grow in. So when he brings them back to this country, he's able to pot them up in a soil mix that replicates the soil mix from where they came from over there. And they're a bit like chameleons. They imitate the surroundings to blend in, either stand out or to blend down so they don't get eaten.
I just love this one in the front here where it's just got the tiniest little slit in the top where it's just coming through. It's just they're just so fascinating. Is it best to grow them individually like this? I mean, obviously they're going to clump up, but do people ever sort of mix and match different species in the same pot?
You can do that, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's like buying a pack of garden flowers. They're all going to be different size, germinate at different rates. I think it's best just to buy a small pack of one variety, grow them. If you've grown them well, you can sell on any excess or swap with a friend that's doing the same.
Now, one of the things I do on my podcast every year is a sow along, where I encourage people to grow plants from seed. And obviously cacti and succulents are fantastic things to use for this particular project. Apart from lithops, any other particular cacti, would you just recommend going for a mixed pack, or are there any particular ones that are easy or particularly fun?
No, I wouldn't go for a mixed pack, full stop. Go for certain species. Mammillarias are a type of cactus that have been around for a long time, but when they produce flowers, they're little flowers, but they form a ring round the growth centre. So 30 or 40 flowers in a ring near the top of a cactus really look attractive. So a mammillaria, they're fairly easy to grow, and they grow fairly quick and can get large if you want them large.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And obviously the BCSS has its seed scheme, which you can get seed from very reasonably, and increasingly lots of other places selling cactus seed as well now. You're right, it's fun. And the thing I like about cactus from seed is, unlike, say, growing, tomatoes from seed, they don't take up too much room. You've got quite a long time when they're just sort of doing their thing in their seed tray before you have to do anything with them.
Yes. Tomatoes, very quickly, you've got to prick them out into a grow bag or whatever, and before the season's at an end, the plant's died and you've reaped the harvest. One lithops this size, they're a minimum of 3 years old. And I wouldn't sell them below 3 years of age.
Right. And where is there anything that you can't get your hands on at the minute that you'd like to sell, but it's just not available or too difficult?
Yes, there are some, but they've generally been unavailable commercially, basically because they store the seed. Perhaps some of the mammillarias, choice ones, when they flower, they store the seed pack within the body of the plant, and you can't get to the seed to get it out.
Oh,
so
right,
it makes them rare, so it means the availability of the seed is very limited and very dear.
I hadn't thought of that, but that's a really good point. And when you get to the point where you're ready to prick out you've got some things over here that are in trays here. Is this these things that you're ready to prick out that have been grown from seed?
Yes, these are big enough. They're probably about 4 years old, but I've not had the space to prick them out. They're mesembryanthemum from South Africa again that I'll prick out into one of these 6.5 centimetre pots. I
love looking at these. They're just like a little sort of jewel box of different colours and textures, aren't they? Do you ever sort of see somebody's come up and buy something and you're like, oh, I don't really want to sell that? It's just, probably not.
I did at first. First. It was a bit of a wrench, but I'm doing it commercially. This isn't a collection you're looking at, it's what I sell. Yeah. But it's a selection that changes from year to year, so I never get bored. With a collection, they can sit there a bit like fossils in certain cases, and you're not seeing the whole variety of cacti and succulents in front of you. This way, I'm forever learning about new varieties and so on.
One other thing that's catching my eye here is this Crashula Buddha's Temple. That's one of those plants that you see all over sort of Instagram. It's just so, in a way, bizarre looking, with this amazing nested set of leaves. The Crashulas are an amazing plant family. Hayley and I were talking about this yesterday. I think they might be my favourite genus in the succulents. But are those hard to grow, those Crashulas, Buddha's Temple specifically?
I find Buddha's Temples specifically are hard. They don't like to be overwatered, but there again, you've still got to water them so that the patination comes out. But yes, they're very hard. Once they flower, you then find at that point where the dead flowers and stems die, you often get 3 or 4 new Buddha's Temple come. So it starts to spread, and then it won't stand upright. So it's probably best just to cut the new stems off after a year or two and start new plants.
And they're easy enough to propagate, presumably, like all the Crashulas,
You just stick them in some sort of compost like this, there you can see that's the old leaf.
Yep.
And it's rooted with new shoots coming out. And that's, I think, within the last year, just waiting for those to root.
Are you doing lots of shows this summer? Are you out and about?
I'm not doing too many. It's the bigger ones I tend to do now and online. Speaking to other nurseries, a lot of people aren't having the visitors to the nurseries as we used to.
Yeah.
Whether that's due to COVID or whatever. But internet sales are, really going well.
That's great to hear. Well, it's fantastic to see you're going strong and such a lovely collection of plants. And it's delightful to see such good what's the word, husbandry, I guess is the word. It's just delightful. So I'm sure I'll bump into you at some of the shows this summer and probably have my wallet open for some more cacti and succulents. Just don't tell my husband.
You'd have to hide them in the boot of your car and smuggle them indoors.
He won't notice. I mean, they're not that big. I'm not going to buy anything huge. It's all good.
That is all for this week's show. Thank you so much to Tony Irons, and do check the show notes at janeperrone.com for a full transcript of this interview, of this episode, and links to Tony's website and other information that you might find useful. I'll be back next week with more planty chat just for you. Have a great week. Bye. The music you heard in this episode was Roll Jordan Roll by the Joy Drops, The Road We Used to Travel When We Were Kids by Komiku, and Dizzy Spells by Josh Woodward. All tracks are licensed under Creative Commons. Visit the show notes for details.